Narcissist, Seduction. Episode 12. At 10:10 p.m, Ashley opened the door of Ian Wynn's anthracite black BMW and stepped inside. "Am I late?" she asked. "Not especially." "You see, you are relaxed. If Peter was picking me up, and I was not ready at the agreed time, he would be ringing me up, and he would shout at me when I got in the car." "It's only a few minutes. I reasoned you must still be talking." "Precisely. I was just saying goodbye." "I suppose it depends how long you keep him waiting, though, doesn't it? After about 20 minutes, I would be wondering where you were." "Yes, but you wouldn't shout." "No, I wouldn't." She cast a quick look out into the road, and seeing that it was empty, she leant over and kissed him. "Let's go." Wynne started the engine, and the headlights flared up, illuminating the road ahead. He looked over his shoulder and pulled out. "How was it?" "Oh, fine, thank you. It's very hot inside, though. I was melting." "Yes, it's been a warm day." "I've drunk so much water. I've been backwards and forwards to the toilet all evening." "Were there many people there?" "Yes. I couldn't see any empty spaces on the tables. I felt sorry for the men in their dinner jackets. They looked pretty uncomfortable." "More reason to drink the cold beer, then." "Like you need a reason." "So says the leader of the temperance movement," joked Wynne. Ashley reached across and took his left hand. "Your hands were made for holding." "You're not the first to say that, actually," said Wynne. "Oh, really?" "Yes, I had a girlfriend at school who said that. We went for a walk after a football tournament, and we wandered along a disused railway line. I took her hand, and she said precisely what you said." Remarked Ashley. Wynne looked across at her, and she glanced out of the window, trying to conceal her disgruntled expression from him. "My hand goes better with yours," he smiled. She turned back and smiled. "I thought I was never going to get away. All the chaps wanted to speak to me." "Well, you ladies are quite a rarity, those type of bashes, aren't you?" "I like it that way." "Was Mrs. Pepperpot there?" asked Wynne, referring to one of their former colleagues. "Yes, she even gave a speech." "Blimey, was it any good?" "It was okay. But she would benefit from some voice coaching, I would say. Her delivery could be improved." "Ah, well, so speaks the expert." "Exactly. I don't like giving speeches and presentations, but I do know how to do it properly." "All those recitals when you were younger, I should imagine," remarked Wynne, recalling the subject matter of one of their lengthy morning telephone conversations. "Yes, I was very good." "So you've told me. I'll have to show you my trophies sometime. Polish them first, though, if you insist." They talked more about the evening as they drove through the fairly quiet city until they reached Wynne's house. He parked the car, and they both headed indoors. "Do you want a drink at all?" he offered. "No, I'm fine, thank you," she replied, and then kissed him. They embraced at the foot of the stairs, and then she turned, heading upwards. Once in the bedroom, Wynne removed his jacket, flinging it over a nearby chair. She launched herself at him, placing her hands either side of his head and kissing him fiercely. She lowered her hands and began unbuttoning his shirt as he unbuckled his belt and unbuttoned his trousers. They slid to the floor as he kicked one shoe off, followed by the other. "Unzip me," she demanded, spinning around. Still shaking off his trousers, Wynne pulled down the zip on the back of her dress, and she slid down the straps off her shoulders. Her dress fell to her waist, and Wynne lowered his mouth to her breast, taking the nipple into his mouth. She cried out and pulled his face into her as his tongue flicked back and forth, coaxing her nipple into hardness. She pussed her dress down, letting it drop to the floor as he managed to remove his last leg from his trousers. He stood up and kissed her before she broke off, and kissed his shoulder, and then began to bite him. Her hand reached for him, and finding him hard, she began to stroke him through his underwear. "Take them off," she ordered. "You too," he answered. He pulled down his underwear and watched as she frantically removed her knickers. She fell back onto the bed, and he lay next to her. Their mouths locked once again as he massaged her breasts, and she took hold of him. He shuddered with delight as her touch, as they kissed, hands roaming, touching, pressing, and caressing. He pushed her thighs apart as he inserted a finger into her, marvelling again at how wet she was. He let his finger slide upwards, massaging her swelling clit, as she writhed next to him. She was stroking him, hand cupped around his cock, alternating the movement. Wynne shifted his position and slid a second finger into her. He increased the pace, his fingers sliding in and out of her quickly. "Oh, God, yes, yes," she groaned. He shifted his lower half away from her, forcing her to let go and enabling him to concentrate on her. He lowered his mouth, kissing her chest, biting at her nipples as his fingers jerked in and out of her. Yes, don't stop, Ian. Don't stop," she urged him. He kept the rhythm going as he returned to her mouth, sliding his tongue in and finding hers waiting. He felt her buck and lifted his mouth to look at her. She screwed her face up, an aggressive expression forming. "I'm coming," she said. He increased the tempo, and she opened her mouth, eyes narrowed. She raised her right hand and, with her fist, struck him on the arm, once and then once more. Her pelvis squirmed as he let his fingers remain inside her, as she made a low squealing sound, and then hit him again. The blows were more for effect than to hurt him, rebounding from his upper arm harmlessly. He kissed her again, and then placed himself between her legs, letting his hard cock nudge against her slick pussy. He looked up and stared into her eyes. "Think you can have me, do you?" she said, as she drew her legs together. "Only if you want that, but I know that you do," answered Wynne. He nudged her thigh away with his own leg and pushed forward, feeling the head of his cock push against her wet warmth. She issued a groan of delight and rolled her eyes. "That is all you want, you men," she said. "Not at all," he answered, and propelled himself off her to lie next to her, leaning on his elbow. She gave a gasp, half of frustration, half of delight. "I'm in no rush, believe me," he said. She sat up and pushed him onto his back as she began to kiss his chest and let her mouth go lower until she took him into her mouth. He gave a low moan of contentment and placed his hands behind his head as she continued to suck him. He looked down and saw the mass of blonde curls bobbing up and down as she enthusiastically went about her task. He lowered a hand and let his fingers caress her hair, smoothing it back so he could see her mouth around him. She continued as he savoured her urgent mouth, her tongue flicking around him as she alternated between taking him deep and then moving her mouth up and down quickly over the head of his penis. After a few minutes, she moved her mouth away from him and levelled her face with his. "Why haven't you come yet?" she asked. Wynne gave a shrug. "Most men would have come by now. In fact, all of them would." "It isn't time to," he answered. Ashley reflected on this comment for a moment, and then her mouth widened into a satisfied grin. "I am going to enjoy this relationship," she said, and began kissing his chest. "So, it's a relationship, is it?" asked Wynne, as her hand took hold of him once again. "Of course," she said. "I am pleased to hear that. Spin round, so I can eat you," he instructed. "No, that's okay." "Why not?" he asked, lifting her up. She continued to move her hand, but turned to look at him. "I just don't like it." Really? Why is that? I'm just not comfortable about it. I may tell you more one day, about the reason why. You will like it when it's done properly. Confident, aren't you? I know my strengths. I like that. So? No, I don't want to. That's fair enough, but I think we can overcome any reticence you may have. I hope so. I feel safe with you. I can relax. It's because we are so in tune with one another. We certainly do go well together. We fit together perfectly. Wynne lay down and let her continue to attend to him, enjoying her touch and the intermittent sensation of her mouth about him. Ashley stood, dressing. Wynne lay naked, still watching her. Aren't you getting dressed? It'll be time to sleep soon, he answered. No point. Well, I hope you will see me to my car. Of course. I'll just put a bathrobe on. Won't the neighbours see? And? She laughed. She turned to the mirror and inspected herself, moving her hair about. Once satisfied with her appearance, she began placing items in her large bag, packing the hairdryer and her work clothes, which Wynne had hung up for her while she was at the dinner. Ian, she said as she turned away from the mirror. Yes, Ashley. If you knew I didn't like something, you wouldn't make me do it, would you? Of course I wouldn't. Why do you ask? She looked thoughtful. Wynne waited, as she seemed to be composing herself. Unusually, she looked forlorn. He had not seen her look like this before, and he sat up. I thought you wouldn't. I just wanted to check. Why? What is it? She shook her head. I'll tell you one day. He gave a nod, recognizing not to press her on whatever it was that had troubled her. Well, I'm ready. I wish I was staying with you. So do I. I'd love nothing more than have you stay for the night. I've never spent the night with anyone other than my husband, you know. Is that right? Even when you had your affairs? Yes. Well, that'll be a first for us, won't it? All of this will be a first for me. To be loved properly, at long last. I love you so much. Nobody can understand how much. Will you see me out, please? Wynne nodded. He rose and slipped on a bathrobe. She kissed him and went first, descending the stairs past the expensive prints of ruins, castles, and landscapes that lined the wall. They walked along the cooler night in silence, and she got into her car. You know what you're doing, don't you? She asked. I believe so, yes. Well, you do a good impression of someone who does, even if you don't know. Thank you. We'd better not speak on the journey back. It's nearing midnight, and he might call me. I can't really say I was on the phone to a client at this time. Unless you chose an American one, smiled Wynne. He leant into the car and kissed her again. Text me to let me know you get home. I will. She closed the door, and he watched her drive away before returning to his house. He locked the front door and padded to the kitchen, taking a bottle of San Pellegrino from the fridge. He untwisted the lid and drank the chilled contents, savouring the sharp coldness. He replaced the lid and walked upstairs, taking the bottle with him. Once there, he noticed that his phone was flashing gold. He smiled and checked the message. All I need, within temptation. XXX. Another song. Another method of telling me how you feel, said Wynne. He looked at the bed, still seeing her lying there, naked beneath him, still tingling from her orgasm, and he wondered when he would feel himself inside her. Still, tonight had been a large step forward. He reached for his laptop to look up this latest installment of emotion conveyed through video. As the song began playing, he picked up the football shirt and inhaled deeply, revelling in her scent, listening intently to the emotive lyrics which spilled from the laptop. He could feel himself falling, and he loved every moment of it. He had found the one that he wanted.